Alright. I think, to my knowledge, I've done everything in this game. I'm sure I'm missing something. I don't have all the achievements, so I'm clearly missing something. But I did everything that I could possibly think of. So I think it's time to discuss this game that I backed and didn't pay attention to until it released. So everything that I got, I had no expectations for. But I am feeling a little disappointed. Specifically because this game, there was a brief period in this game, I think between like the 15-minute to maybe like 3-hour mark, where I thought the game was going to be great. Because it actually had difficulty. The early game of this game actually has difficulty, and that difficulty just went away. But we're going to talk about... I just want to talk about everything with the game that I sort of have issues with, because right now I think the game's like 5 or 5.5 out of 10. I think with patches, and this game is entirely fixable with patches, it could be like a 7. It's not going to renew my experience with the game. I still enjoyed it. It's just, it's definitely, I have to be objective and say it's definitely not amazing. It could have been amazing. But let's just talk about everything they did wrong. And what I want to talk about first, I think, is not what people are going to talk about first. It's most people are going to talk about the combat, because that definitely has issues. I want to talk about the platforming, right? Just from a game design perspective, this is really interesting to me. So, a very common theme throughout this game, I imagine, I don't know who else worked on the game besides Mike Z, but I'm sure there's definitely a theme in this game where someone was like, hey, look at this thing that I coded. Oh, cool, put that in the game. That is the theme of this game. Look at how many travel powers you have in this game. I cannot think of another platformer where you have more small powers. So let's see, what do you got? You got jump. You got a long jump. You got a chargeable long jump. You have a dash that turns into a run, which then augments your jumps. You have what? You have an air dash. You have an upwards air attack. You have a vertical air attack. These can only be used once unless you hit something, which then renews the counter on it and also resets your air dash. You have this Shovel Knight move, which is used to jump off of certain spikes, not all spikes, and off of enemies and things. What else you have? You have an axe to cling to walls, which can only be used once. You have a spear to cling to ceilings. That's great. What else? You got a slide. Then you have a jumping slide, which is done with a completely different button and input than the regular slide, because that's not confusing. And then very late game, which you won't discover when you actually need it, you get this fucking thing, where you just go flying a million miles an hour, which slowly drains your health. Oh yeah, you also have arrows to trigger certain things, switches and stuff like that. You also have arrows that turn terrain, turn certain hazardous terrain into platformable terrain. Then you can use those same arrows on enemies to turn them into platformable terrain. Then you can use those same arrows on the enemies that you've turned into platformable terrains into terrain that you can then teleport to. What? Like, what? Why are there so many mechanics, dude? It's like, I play fighting games, I'm used to it. And there's an appeal to the platforming in this game, because once it starts getting going, it starts off very basic. The platform in this game I consider to be average to good. Very rarely does it go beyond that. But it's just like, there's so many small abilities that you have, and you have to add them up. But the game never takes advantage of them, except for the secret area in the game. And the secret area, as which will become a theme, kind of does everything that the game should have been doing from the beginning. Because the secret area is the only part of the game that utilizes any of the mechanics in the game. So the platform in the game is not great. It's good. It can be average to good. In the secret area, I actually consider it to be pretty good. I enjoyed the secret area a lot. It is by far my favorite part of the game. But now I want to talk about, since we're talking about platforming, I want to talk about level design. Boy, you just don't You don't appreciate good Metroidvania level design. And I didn't think, until you play a bad one, but I didn't think this game was going to be a Metroidvania style game early on, because I thought it was just going to be individual areas. So what's a good example here? Yeah, let's go to Tychron, right? So upon the first playthrough of a level, the level design's okay. You know, it's not amazing, but it's not terrible, right? But boy, if you want to do anything, in this game, you're going to have to travel. Look how big this map is. Look at all this crap, right? There is no easy way to get around. And a lot of reasons for that is, like, one, you have this level design, which, with the powers that you gain access to in this game, especially late game ones, it doesn't get that much easier to traverse these levels. You don't get through them that much faster. Contrast that to, like, Bloodstained, where you get something like the Accelerator Shard, where you just go blitzing through the whole game super fast. So you can finish endgame quests a lot faster. Go this point to that point much more quickly. Say I'm here right now. If I wanted to visit, let's say visit Mike Z, who's right here. What is the fastest way to do that? I have to teleport here, run here, go up an elevator, run up here, go here, up here, go to an elevator, go in here, out here. You can't actually get to him from right here, despite the fact the map telling you. I think you have to go around here, out there, up and around like this. What? That is a lot of running around. And, like, there's, like, if I want to get anywhere in these maps, I have to just start from so far away. And they, like, understood, like, this links to, does this link to Port Malfia? I think it does. I forget. But, like, they understood the concept that certain areas should be able to be accessed via late game travel powers, right? That you'd be able to access them later on through the game at a quicker access and unlock shortcuts. But what they didn't keep in mind is that the shortcuts need to be shorter, right? There is a shortcut in Mount Sumeru. I don't think I can see it from here. But there's a shortcut in Mount Sumeru near the end of the game that you, like, the means to get there is almost just as long. Like, to get to that, where is it? It's out of Canul. So you can't just go to this shortcut or teleport to this shortcut. You have to run all the way through Canul to get to... So, like, I teleport here, like, oh my god, this is so, it's, like, so frustrating. See, because now I'm using the teleporter, and the teleporter leads me down here. This is not a shortcut. But if you went first you'd have to go to Port Malfia, then you had to go outside, then you had to go to the port, and then you would teleport here. And then you could run all the way over here, and then this area here, I believe, leads to Mount Sumeru. But that's, like, just as much distance as just going to Lan and running to Mount Sumeru. It completely destroys the concept of playing the game quickly. And more to the point, like, the late game travel powers, this one, you don't get in the game in a reasonable spot. I didn't get this power until after I had done everything, because why would I go all the way to the end to the actual literal final boss before doing everything else? I didn't think I would gain a new power going to the final boss. But then, like, this is your late game travel power. This right here. See this? This is not fast or conducive to speedy movement, right? At the end of the game, you want to be blitzing through areas. This is not fast. Shooting this arrow and then teleporting through this little tunnel is not conducive to traveling around the map really quickly. This actual late game power is a little better for it, but even that is not great. I guess I should just do this. So at any point, if you have a quest to, like, run off somewhere over here, which there are a lot of, you just gotta run. Say you have a quest that's just over here, which there was, I believe, right here. You have to go there, and then you have to run all the way back. Why can't you just go to the inner realm and teleport back to Morphelphia? Okay, so there's multiple ways they could fix this problem, right? One, actually have conducive shortcuts that make sense. They're actually shorter. That's one option. Another option is the ability to teleport to locations. There were so many save points in this game that I expected, I was 100% convinced you would be able to teleport to them later in the game. You can't do that. You can't teleport to any of these. So getting around this game is a fucking nightmare. Just unnecessary legwork. Not fun in any regard. You're just going from point A to point B over and over and over again. And unless you're doing every single character's side quest all at once, it's gonna take, it's a lot of running. It's a lot of running, and you're not gonna want to do it. It's just very silly. It's very, very silly. I don't know what they were thinking with that. So yeah, you could either just have better secrets, better late game travel powers. The ability to just teleport back, at least, would just work wonders. You should have been able to access the... you should be able to go to Inner Realm, and then right here, right conveniently here, you should be able to access... what was the screen there? Was it the ley lines? The ley lines, or whatever the hell they're called. You should be able to access them from your Inner Realm late game. Absolutely. I should be able to go to Inner Realm and access these teleporters. Absolutely. Just like this. I go to the Inner Realm and then I go right here. Like, there should be a way right at the entrance to the Inner Realm where I can go right there. And that's I think my main gripe with just the game and how it is to get around. Your first playthrough of each level is going to be fine. I don't think it's bad. I think some of the platforming can actually be quite good, especially in Mount Sumeru. Mount Sumeru is like the best part of the game. It actually utilizes all of the things at your disposal, and the secret itself is the best. Alright, now I just want to gush about the secret of this game, and this is what makes this so frustrating. The secret of this game, which I did before I got like the final power-up, which made it all the harder. The secret of this game is actually really, really good. It's a nice, fun platforming section with a decent amount of save points in it, and I'm clearly failing. It's already been a while, I forget. Oh right, you can't use that. That's right, that's really frustrating. Because that overrides the air dash thing, and you could hold down the air dash before to go a little farther, if I recall. So now I can't do that. That's frustrating, actually. Oh god, it's already been like a couple days since I played. Oh my god, it's been a while. This is what I'm talking about, though. A lot of the controls in this game, just like, so arbitrary. But this section, it's like, it's a fun, fast-paced platforming section. That utilizes the mechanics in the game in a way that the game itself never utilizes. Mount Sumeru sort of does. But a lot of the stuff in this section is just so much better than the whole rest of the game. And I don't know why they didn't just do more of this. Oh, I'm supposed to long jump. That's right. And that's what's fun about this. It's like, this is, if the platforming through the game was like this the whole time, obviously, like, for retreading purposes, you shouldn't have design like this. Oops. I think I'm just gonna die. Like, you shouldn't have design like this to retread, but as like a final, as like individual areas with like something at the end and then that's it, they should have had way more areas like this. Because this is so much better, design-wise. Oh, fuck. And the fun part about this platforming section is, like, even though I've done this before, and I'm an idiot, and I just forget, like, you can improv all of this on the fly and be like, oh, I need to use this. Okay, yes. And you can very easily come up with solutions on the fly. And it has very generous save points. Like, Where else in the entire game do you ever even need to learn that you can air dash this, air dash cancel this move? I knew you could do it before this because I'm a fighting game player and I experiment with everything, but the very fact it's even a thing is just so bizarre. What am I doing here? What am I doing here? Oh, that didn't work. And it just utilizes all of the mechanics in the game in a fast-paced manner. Oh, God. I suck. I suck. I suck. Oh man, I remember this section. This section took me so long to figure out. Look how like nice and clever. This portion of the game makes like the very tiny but unbelievable amount of like platform mechanics that you have. Like in most platformers, you get like a couple abilities, and then the platforming is just evolutions of those and how they can be pushed to the limit and interesting like that. This game just has like a million tiny mechanics all over the place. But the secret actually utilizes them in an interesting way. And this part right here, I spent a solid 30 minutes thinking about how I could even get through this section. Because I don't know why he didn't put there's an invisible wall down there. I don't know why there's one down there. It took me forever. Because I was like, okay, well, you know, if I hit this, am I supposed to air dash over it? No, if I can air dash over and then I use an axe to go down, I'm not going to have an air dash to cancel out of it. And it's just like, you had to understand all of the mechanics and how they work to actually even get through this section. At least I did. Oh, God. And the amount of times that thing hit me. Which leads me to another point. Keep hitboxes for spikes slightly lower than the actual spike itself. That's some Super Mario rules, because it's a lot more satisfying for players who think, I can't believe that didn't kill me, than I can't believe that hit me. That's, see? That took me forever to figure out. Now let's talk about the combo system, and I'm going to try and be a little bit precise on this, because I could ramble about it for a while. Now when this game first started, the game's combat was most fun to me between the first 20 minutes to like 3 hours in. Once you made the jump to 3 Iddhi, the game ceases to be difficult. I don't think 3 Iddhi was the problem, although I do think the Iddhi bar raising too much is a problem, because it changes the risk-reward of using the heal versus using, you know, Iddhi attacks, you know?
Dodge this.
I think the Iddhi bar raises too quickly. I think you gain a number of actions way too quickly. 5 actions is a lot. You shouldn't have been able to have 5 actions, and if you're going to have 5 actions, it shouldn't have been until like the very end. Like 5 actions is something you should have gotten at the very, very end of the game. Absolute end, you get 5 actions. 4 should have been like the peaking point, and you shouldn't have gotten that until like mid-act 2 or something, at best. Because it's all it does is just increase the duration of the game, right? All it does is increase the duration of things. It doesn't actually make fights or combos more interesting. It just increases the length of them, which is not necessarily an interesting thing, right? So, and on top of that, like, there's not really an incentive to keep actions, right? If there was an incentive to keep actions, you probably wouldn't, you know, you would hold on to them. Maybe it helps you defend if you don't have actions when you're guarding. Maybe you take more damage, more block damage or something like that. There's all sorts of things you could do to just incentivize not doing it. Early on in the game, I felt like there was incentive because you had to, using a healer made sense because characters early on died in like 2 to 3 hits. And I think that's how this game should operate. Outside of like really, really tanky characters, like that's their purpose. I think characters should die in anywhere from 1 to 3 hits. Right? Just like a fighting game. 1 to 3 mistakes and you die. If you're not blocking properly, you're dead. And I think that's how the game should have operated. And it ceases to do that. Early on, the game absolutely felt like that to me. Now, I didn't know what I was doing back then because the game didn't give you a training room until like 3-4 hours in the game. But once you get the training room, and then I think a little bit before it, once you get that first jump to you get 3 Iddhi, the game just becomes pathetically easy. I feel like because this game operates on thresholds, right? Once you get 3 Iddhi, your HP goes up incredibly. You go from doing like 500 damage as a lot to doing 5,000 damage. Or like 1,200 damage or whatever it is. And that happens multiple times throughout the game, which is going to suck for speedrunners, by the way, if you manage the sequence break. But it's just like, I feel like they didn't, like, they have to rescale the game over and over again. I feel like they just screwed up doing that somewhere. Like, they missed a number on an enemy, on, like, the scaling. And monsters went from, again, like, 1 to 2, 3-shotting you if you didn't block it, to doing no damage to you whatsoever. Except randomly, just bizarrely. There was one enemy near the very end of the game when you went to Tai Krung, whatever it is, where you went there like the second time. Randomly, some of the guard enemies there were one-shotting, or like two-shotting me. I was like, wow, did they patch it? I thought so, but it was just those enemies and nothing else. It was so weird. But that's how the whole game should have been. Because as it is right now, so what happens at this point in the game, right? I have 5 actions. I have a training room. But the training room doesn't really have an incentive because there's not a lot of benefit to juggling enemies. Just keeping them on the ground and hitting them increases the damage threshold just as well, right? And because enemies are so weak, I never felt compelled to increase or create interesting juggle opportunities because there's not a lot of incentive to keep opponents airborne, first and foremost, and also to just do interesting combos. It's not really beneficial. I'm going to show you how I went through pretty much the entirety of this game. Normally wouldn't do this against someone who's shielding, but this is basically how I went through the game. Start with her. Spin. Spin. There we go. And if I wanted to spend Iddhi, I would keep one action left on someone. Usually him. Because his level 3 does a lot. And that would be it. And that's how I one-rounded most things. Pretty much every boss. It's just kind of really sad and depressing, because it should not have been the case. And if you decrease the number of actions that players had, like, the fact that I have so many actions, I do so much damage, and the enemies never get their turn, because you don't just want to make the enemies more spongy. I think in this case you want to nerf the player characters, and more specifically, give more reward to single target hits over AoE hits, because when you have multiple enemies, it's just so easy. Like, these characters just do almost as much damage as single target enemy characters. I just think it's definitely not properly balanced. A lot of these characters are way better than others, and they didn't give me proper incentive to use them. But for the most part, I would say slightly nerf characters, decrease the number of actions, give incentive to keep actions. I don't like that the Iddhi bar goes up to 7. I mean, at the very end of the game, it's fine, but even when it goes up to 5, I felt like that was too much. I prefer the risk-reward of using this and, like, actively needing to heal. If the enemies are difficult, you're going to actively need to heal more. And enemies need to be faster They need to have more attacks, and they need to have attacks that utilize things that the game introduces. Command throws, just guard only attacks, all of these are prevalent in the game, but they're never used. They're never used. They just put them into the game and said, there it is, and then it's never used again, and it's very depressing. Because the game's combat can be very, very fun. And like, if you're trying to combo things, and there's multiple enemies going on, they should be able to attack you while you're comboing, in my opinion. Like, I don't know. Game could have been very, very fun, and it's entirely patchable. They can absolutely fix this. Whether or not they choose to, that's up to them. But there's many, many things they could possibly do. God knows I have a million ideas in my head, but I'm not going to lay everything out. I'm sure Mike Z has his own ideas. For the most part, really, you could just make the game so much better just by increasing damage values, adding a hard setting, adding a very hard setting. Could go wonders to make this game more difficult, because just by making enemies stronger, suddenly your Iddhi's going to have to be spent differently, actions are going to be spent differently, and now suddenly enemies are going to be living longer because you have to defend more, you got to use actions for defense, and it's like, that's good. Maybe you should have to have an action to defend. I don't know. There's lots of things they could try and do. I'm sure they did a lot of experimenting beforehand, but in my opinion, this combat definitely fell short. Mostly due to damage numbers, but I do think there's too many actions on the character's parts. And yeah. Use the mechanics you put in the game, Mike Z. I want to see more command throws. Change up that timing. Make it difficult for me to react to things. Right now, too easy. See, like how many attacks he has right now, man. And you have to learn how to guard properly. He's got a throw. He's got an AoE. It's just so much better. Like, the whole game is so much better like this. Especially when your Iddhi amount is less. Right now, like, devoting yourself to that heal. What the? Imagine if there are like multiple enemies right now. This would be really stressful, man. I actually wonder if this game would benefit from like not having it be turn-based. Like if you're juggling someone, they can't act, but if they're not being juggled, they could attack in the middle of everything else. That way you could be attacking and defending at the same time, which I actually think might be more interesting. And then you get punished for doing all blocks on like every situation because your Iddhi's going down. There's a lot of well-designed mechanics in this game, and they just never utilize it. It's so disappointing. And attacks like that will fuck you up, where you can, you know, guarding individually is like really rewarding. There's just a lot of ways they could have made the game way better, in my opinion. And once the Iddhi bar gets so big, like, it takes forever to charge, man. I like that hitbox a little broken. Woohoo! See, like, if there were multiple enemies and, like, things are going on at the same time, it would be hard for me to keep up with this stuff, you know? But it, on its own, this is easy to deal with. Right? I don't know. It's depressing. The game could have been so challenging and fun, because the combat definitely has the ability to be challenging. I've never done this. Not worth. Compound's better. But yeah, I don't know. Kill me, Mike Z's cat. See, even that's not enough damage. But it's still punishing. I appreciate it. As it should be. And then you could make a comeback like this, which I've done against this guy. You slowly build up your Iddhi and then you res. But how much Iddhi you have to build up is like an insane amount with 7 bars. So I think the balance was better at like 3. You know? Or maybe 5. But I think 3 was good. But that's just me. Yeah, I wish it was better. But it is what it is. Fix it, Mike Z.